our next speaker who works to protect big cats. So this is Stuart Chapman, and his goal is to help protect big cats and bring back their populations by 2022. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome in Stuart to talk a little bit more about his work. How are you doing, Stuart?
Yeah, hi, good. Right. So I'm going to share my screen and just, can you see this now?
Waiting for it. I don't see it in our control room yet. So just standing by, hopefully that'll pop up. If not, we'll figure it out. 1 second. Yeah, I'm not seeing the screen share yet. So if you are, so you should be able to click, there's a share button that you should be able to access, and that's working. And it's still not picking it up. Okay. Give me 1 second while we figure out what we can do with that. I'm going to hit up our engineers to see if we can get a solution sorted. In the meantime, tell me a little about where are you calling in from? Where in the world are you?
Yeah, I'm actually coming to you from where I live now, which is in Kathmandu. So home of the tiger and many other incredible species. Look, just looking at this, I can see it says, I press on share.
There we go, I've got it. I see it. You brought it up, you fixed it, figured it out.
Okay. And now can you see my screen with the slide presentation on it?
Oh, I definitely can. It's, yep, I can see bringing back.
Okay.
So we're going to learn about your work with big cats. And with that, I'm going to bring up your presentation so we can all see it. So if you just want to tap the hide button on the bottom down there, and we won't see the little bar at the bottom, because we want to see all the big cats without any bars blocking us. So if you click hide, there you go. So we are set to learn about what your work is, what your work is and how you're working to bring back the roar. I'll turn it over to you.
There's something I find mesmerizing about this photo. It's not just the intensity of the tiger's gaze as it spots the camera that's just taken its photo. It's not only about the composition of this photo, but it's where it was taken. This was taken at 3,600 meters up a Bhutanese mountain. The forest is a rhododendron forest, and the tiger is showing it to me in this photo its incredible adaptability. Not only are tigers found at that high altitude, but they're also found at sea level in the steamy forests of the Sundarbans, the world's largest mangrove on the India-Bangladesh border. They're also found in the frozen forests of the Russian Far East, where it gets to -40 in the winter. So the tiger is actually a very adaptable cat. It can live in a whole host of different circumstances. But despite that adaptability, the story of the tiger is one of decline. Up until 2010, tiger populations were in free fall, as you can see from this graph. They had been declining since essentially man interacted with the animal, but was at an all-time low. At that time, maybe there were 5,000 snow leopards on the planet. Maybe there were 30,000 lions. So of all the big cats, the tiger was in the most trouble. And clearly something had to happen if that red line of decline wasn't going to continue towards oblivion. But something extraordinary did happen. And that was that in 2010, the leaders of the tiger range states, or the leaders of countries that have tigers in the wild, came together at a summit in Russia. And they agreed that by the next year of the tiger, so the Lunar Year of the tiger, which was in 12 years and is now going to be next year, they committed to double the number of tigers in the wild from that all-time low of 3,200 animals to over 6,000 by next year. Having a time-bound, clear goal for a single species is almost unheard of in species conservation, particularly one endorsed by leaders. And so now I'm going to tell you some of the backstory behind that journey since 2010 and how we're doing on that road to tiger recovery. What this chart shows here is the countries in green where tiger numbers have gone up over the last 10 years. India, Nepal, Bhutan, Russia, China, all have seen marked increases in tiger numbers. There are a couple of countries where tigers have remained stable, in Bangladesh and Thailand, but they are in decline in Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, and unfortunately, Laos, where I lived for 12 years, is the first country, the last country for tigers to become extinct around 2015, 2016. So what I'm going to do now is going to take you on a journey. I'm going to take you to one location in the green zone where tiger numbers have been going up, which is in Nepal. And then I'm going to go to Malaysia, where tiger numbers have been going down, and tell you about some of the conservation efforts in these countries. When talking about saving or protecting the world's largest carnivorous cat, the solution has to involve people. As you can see from this graphic, there are more people living inside this circle than outside, and all of the world's tigers, also orangutans, Asian rhinos, Asian elephants, are also found inside this circle. So clearly, any conservation solution outside of protected areas has to involve people, and occasionally also inside. So conservation solutions have to be multifaceted and dynamic. So here in Nepal, which is my first case study of where tiger numbers have gone up, just look at these bar charts. So the blue represents tiger population estimates in 2008, so 12 or so years ago. The green was the most recent survey in 2018. Look at that extraordinary increase in Bardia. It's a fourfold. The population of tigers quadrupled over that 10-year period. So let's take another one. Let's take Bangkay on the far right of your screen. In Bangkay National Park, they had 0 11 years ago, but tiger numbers have increased to 21. So clearly, Nepal has hit on a conservation formula that's working, and where tiger numbers in a developing populated country are increasing. So what's going on? How have they achieved this extraordinary success and have almost doubled their total number of tigers? Well, let's stay with Bardia, where we've seen that fourfold increase. So now Bardia is in the top right of your screen. You can see the park boundary marked with that green line. The black dots represent where tigers have been found. In the south is a border with India and another wildlife sanctuary that is found in India. And again, black dots representing where tigers found. But the interesting thing is the piece in the middle, which is known as the Kata Corridor. And the Kata Corridor is a forest community-run area. A lot of people living there, farming, schools, and their local infrastructure. But 10 years ago, this corridor was created. Trees were replanted, and something extraordinary happened. Not only did tigers start using it to connect from one park in the north to one park in the south, which is absolutely essential for large carnivores. They have to be able to migrate, exchange gene pool, disperse into a broader landscape if you want to see increases. But not only did they disperse through this corridor, they actually stayed. And that photo in the top left is a tigress and 3 cubs. They stayed inside the Kata corridor because the conditions for conservation in that corridor were so good that they were able to thrive. The reason for that, and again, you can see Bardia National Park in the green on the top left, is that the conditions for conservation with that community were very good. So the first thing you do is, if you're looking at trying to avoid conflict, and of course there's always going to be conflict where you have large carnivores and people. So it's how do we make it possible to live alongside tigers? So the red marks represent where there are conflict hotspots. So as an NGO, if you have a limited budget, where do you target your action? Where is it that it's the most important interventions should be made? And then what kind of problems are the local community facing? Are they losing livestock to predation? So can providing a predator-proof fence, like in the top right, where these goats are corralled at night, community rangers, you can see in the bottom left, where they are on patrol and looking for problem animals, whether it's elephants or whether it's tigers, but also making sure that the locals who live in that area are beneficiaries of conservation. If they're going to have tigers and elephants and rhinos on their backyard, why shouldn't they benefit? So there has been a big push in terms of ecotourism and ensuring that there is a direct benefit from the tourists coming to see the animals and those who live in the community. Now, of course, this is a moment in time, but I just want to show you something that's a little bit counterintuitive. What you have on the left, top left, is an increasing human population in Nepal. The bottom left, you have an increasing tiger population. So what you'd expect to see is increasing levels of conflict. More tigers surely means more problems. But if you look at the graph on the right of the screen, you can see that actually, yes, there was a peak, and this is the moment in time, and it has gone up again recently. But it is possible over time to reduce the level of conflict with the right amount of interventions, the right conservation interventions, to make it possible to live alongside tigers. Of course, if there are problem animals, immediate action has to be taken. But this shows that there is a formula for living with tigers. Now I'm going to take you to the red zone that I showed on the map, a place where tiger numbers have declined over the last 10 years and where it hasn't gone conservation's way up to a point. One of the reasons, one of the main reasons for tiger decline in Southeast Asia and the extinction of tigers in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam are the use of these wire snares. These are cables. They're about a meter and a half long. They can range from a few millimeters to a centimeter thick, and they're set in their thousands within sometimes protected areas or national parks. They catch anything whose footfall lands inside the loop, and then they move and get caught, or if their neck goes through a loop that's hanging from a tree. They're extremely hard to find, extremely cheap to make, and incredibly efficient at wiping out local wildlife or even targeting animals such as tigers. What happened in Malaysia is illustrated through these two graphs. So the tiger population, Royal Belum National Park, which was in the top northern part of Malaysia, the population of tigers crashed from 32 animals to 14. The population halved over a very short period of time, as you can see from here, over approximately a 10-year period. At the same time, as the tiger population was crashing, snaring levels were going up, which is what you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. So snaring levels, the detection of snares in the forest by rangers was increasing at the same rate that tiger numbers were decreasing. So there was a direct correlation between the two. So when conducting this kind of research, the important thing is then to apply the findings. Research for research's sake is pointless in today's conservation world. There are so many pressures that we need to act quickly. And so looking at this data, what WF Malaysia did was create local community patrol teams. These were from communities living inside the forest. They were hired to go into the forest. There were 10 patrol teams that were hired to go into the forest to look for these snares and remove them. They didn't have any powers of arrest. They went alongside park rangers, but they were incredibly good at finding these snares. And over a very short period of time, over about 5 years, you can see that they not only were able to detect snares, but they were able to reduce them to a level that there were no snares found in 2019. I think for two reasons. One, they were the eyes and ears in the park, and the message was out. If you're a poacher, and many of the poachers were coming from other countries, they weren't from Malaysia, that there was likely to be a patrol team that's going to find you. The second reason, they were just very good at finding these snares. So here is a conservation solution that the story hasn't ended. The tiger numbers are still incredibly low in Malaysia. But here is one of the conditions that is going to make it possible, we hope, for tigers to increase in this important place. So how are we doing? 2022 is fast approaching. 2022 was the upper limit of the target that was set in 2010, when the agreement was to try and double the number of tigers in the wild. There will be a second global tiger summit, again hosted in Russia in September next year. And again, President Putin will invite other tiger range states to come and talk about tigers, talk about the successes, and also put out a roadmap for future tiger conservation for the next 12-year period. So back to the graph. At the beginning, we saw the decline of the tiger over time. So if you follow that curve down to 2010, that was the all-time low. There's a projection of where it was going to go, the continued red dotted line. But what happened is that by 2016 and even by today, the tiger population has started to recover. The curve has been bent upwards and shows that it is possible that when the adequate political will, resources, conservation interventions are made, that it is possible to increase a carnivore population, including tigers. So now, where are we? We may be close to 4,500, 5,000 tigers. We won't know until next year, when a number of countries are going to complete their national estimates. We will get close to 6,000, but we might not reach it. But the point is, it shows that conservation can work for this species. And probably the best example is in India, a country that deals with overpopulation issues, deals with infrastructure issues, deals with a whole host of pressures on its land. But the government decided to invest in tiger conservation. Annually, they spend over 100 million on tiger conservation in tiger conservation areas. And just look at the results. Over time, you can see there's been a gradual increase. And tiger numbers, they are the first country to officially double their tiger numbers. Almost 3,000 tigers at the last estimate from a previous low of 1,400. So here is evidence that tiger conservation in countries with many challenges can make it work if the right conditions are put in place. So I'm just going to leave you with a final few slides. So this is the backstory behind that decrease, the original decrease of tiger numbers. The historic range, so going back 300-400 years, is the cream color on the map. So that's where tigers were originally found. The red denotes where tigers have become extinct in the last 20 years. And the yellow is where tigers are found today. They're only found in 5% of their historic range. And that's why numbers contracted. Now, there have been numerous increases, as you've seen, in places where protected areas were probably below their capacity for tigers. Instead of being home to 100 tigers, maybe they were home to 10 tigers. So there has been increases within these protected areas. But if we want to see a world with more tigers, we have to start to identify more potential spaces for them, either to move from A to B through connectivity conservation, or by finding new areas where we can assist them in repopulating areas that they've lost. Sometimes tigers don't need our help. Here in Nepal, last year, the high altitude record for tigers was broken twice. The first was 2,500 meters in the far west of Nepal, early in 2020. But by the end of last year, that record had been broken by a new tiger, this tiger, that was found at over 3,000 meters. So tigers are on the move. They're moving where there is good forest habitat. They're moving into places where the prey or the animals that the tigers eat are found. And it shows that tigers are on the move. So tigers are looking for new range. They are looking for new places in which to disperse. Sometimes we need direct hands-on conservation to make that happen. And Kazakhstan is a country that has lost its tigers for over 70 years. But they agreed a few years ago to try and bring back tigers to Kazakhstan. And as you can see from the bottom left, they're releasing buka deer into an area that's been designated to get it ready for tigers. So over a period of time, they've improved protection, involvement with community, releasing animals into the area. And the hope is that by 2025, so just 4 short years from now, that tigers will be brought from Russia and released back into the wild, into this reserve. So it shows, again, what is possible to turn around the fortunes of tiger conservation. I'm going to leave you with this final video clip. This was filmed just 3 months ago in a part of India, in the northwest of India, in Rajiji National Park. Rajiji National Park has been split into 2 sectors. And one sector, in the western side, tigers were extinct. And over many years of preparing the ground for the tiger return, identifying where a possible tiger could come from, and the tiger was found in Corbett National Park, 2 animals were released back into the wild. I'll just leave you with this clip. Bringing back the roar in northeast India. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, that was a really great look into the work that you're doing. It's incredible to think that India has already doubled its tiger population ahead of schedule. So what with this, I'm going to back up and think about the small numbers that exist of tigers in the wild. How do you ensure that their genetic pools are staying as wide as possible? I feel like with that range, they could easily move. Now they can't. Is that part of what you're working on with bringing back the roar?
Yeah, it's important that tigers are able to move from one protected to another throughout a landscape. And as that Kata corridor illustrated, that where you can reconnect isolated protected areas, it gives an opportunity for tigers to move. So as tiger cubs are raised, they need to move on to find their own territory. And as they are sort of pushed out of the territory by the female tiger, if they want to survive, they have to find their own hunting ground. And that's where it's important to have these areas that are still connected or still have enough prey or habitat for them to live in.
That of course makes sense, especially with the way that tigers do have the large range that they inhabit, and they're more solitary creatures, correct?
Right, that's right. Yeah. So the only time that you'll see, if you like, a small group of tigers together is a mother with cubs. So at that moment, and the cubs will stay with the mother, say up to 18 months, 2 years. So sometimes when you see these photos of 4 tigers, 3 tigers together, usually what's going on is that it's either a mother with cubs or mother with sub-adults. But after about 2 years, these animals disperse. The female will come back into season and hopefully breed again.
So aside from seeing the tigers at high elevations, where has been the place that you've seen tigers, restate themselves in, become part of the ecosystem again? Where's the one place that it's been most surprising for you to see that there are tigers actually there or being reintroduced there?
Yeah, for me, it's finding tigers at high elevation. I've spent a lot of time in the high hills, as they call them here in Nepal, in these rhododendron coniferous forests. And I'll be quite honest with you, it doesn't feel like Tigerland. I mean, you have muntjac deer, you have other evidence of other small cats. And to find tigers at that elevation is extraordinary. And I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I don't think this is brought on by climate change and tigers are moving because it's getting hot. I think they were always there. But I think what we're seeing is that they're returning to their historic range. And if we were to rewind 100 years, I'm sure people locally would say, yeah, there are tigers in those hills. So I think it's an incredibly encouraging story to see tigers returning naturally, because it is possible in some of these areas, to where they used to inhabit.
So that is, of course, always great to hear that they're finding their own ways there and they're expanding or reconnecting with their past ranges. How do captive tigers play into this goal of increasing tiger populations? I'm curious about that because I know that there are quite a few tigers in captivity and there's often breeding programs or other activities. How do they play a role in what you're hoping to do?
Yeah, well, the short answer is they don't.
They don't. Okay.
No, there are more tigers in captivity than in the wild. I think the latest estimate is over 8,000 tigers in captivity. These animals are human imprinted. Sometimes they are inbred. They're not part of a global effort to ensure that they're not inbred. But most importantly, they don't have the hunting skills to return to the wild. So even though there are all these animals in captivity, there are virtually no examples where tigers that were born in captivity have been released. There are some examples where wild-born tigers or injured tigers have been taken into rehabilitation centers and then re-released back into the wild. But even in that process, it has to be very careful that the tiger doesn't familiarize itself with people, because once you release it, then that becomes part of a new problem. It will either associate humans with trauma or food. So it's important that there are certain conditions that are laid out to make sure that the tiger during captivity keeps its hunting skills going, but also doesn't imprint with people. So that remains a challenge, I think, for conservation. And there are numerous other examples where animals are bred in captivity and released back into the wild. But when dealing with top carnivores, it's the most complex, time and expensive method of trying to reintroduce tigers.
And that's so interesting, because I always think of the two playing hand in hand, where you've got captive animals that expand a gene pool or are able to help with that conservation in the wild. So it's very interesting to hear that that's unfortunately not the case in most cases. And you definitely got a lot of work cut out for you trying to get to that next goal. But it seems like you're really making huge strides even without that kind of support or ability. So really inspiring to hear that. And so on that note, trying to see if we've got any other questions. No, right now we've got the few that came in, and I've already asked them. Is there any last parting thing we should think about? Any way we can be involved with what you're doing? Here at the Global Biodiversity Festival, we're broadcasting all over the world. Is there anything, let's say, me in DC could do to help what you're doing?
Yeah, join a conservation NGO that conserves tigers. The time is now to do that. And there's a whole host of NGOs that work on tiger conservation. Make sure it's wild tiger conservation. The second thing is once COVID allows, be part of that tiger tourism success story, because people love to go into the wild and look for large carnivores. And quite honestly, something changes in my DNA every time I see a tiger in the wild. And even though I've seen them maybe 30 times, every time is like the first time. There's something extraordinary about this animal. And if you haven't yet seen one, please do think about your next trip, because it will stay with you forever.
I can definitely appreciate that. Even just the photo you started with, that the gaze, the look, just everything that it pierces right through you. So I can only imagine what it's like to be in person near that. So I imagine that ecotourism and tiger tourism, that's then making sure that we're going to responsible places that are taking care of the tigers as well, or taking care for the tigers, making sure that we're not intervening in anything. Is there any type of, I guess, ecotourism, tiger tourism we should aim for? Any like ways to know we're doing the right thing?
There are probably only two countries where it's possible to see tigers in the wild, which is India and Nepal. But there are many other places of the 10 countries that still have tigers, that just by visiting that area, being in a place where tigers are, you'll see a whole host of other species. In many ways, that's also enough. For me, to be just in Tigerland is an experience. If you have the chance to go to either India or Nepal, the chances of seeing one are pretty high.
Well, that sounds like an even better reason to want to travel once we all can safely, and support the great work that you're doing and others are doing, and the tigers themselves. So again, Stuart, I really want to thank you for being part of the Global Biodiversity Festival and wrapping up our Friday night with an amazing story about tigers and their rebound and all the work that you're doing. So thank you for that, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.